Oh, geez, there are a bunch of people in the waiting room. That's what happens when I'm not scrolled all the way up. Okay. For those of you who are stuck in the waiting room, I am super sorry about that. We are starting some basic portraits today, and we're not really going to worry about the shading today. We're just going to worry about face structure and proportion. And I'm gesturing. You can't see anything. I'm gesturing. That's fine. So we're just going to learn like the basics of how to place the different features on a face so that they make sense. So you'll want something to draw with. You can draw on a drawing app or on your Chromebooks if you'd like, or paper and a pencil. Your HB pencil will be fine. Because again, like I said, it's just about placing the features today. So we're going to do a lot of contour lines and not very much shading at all. We'll start getting into shading stuff tomorrow. So let's dive in. All right, so I'm going to draw a portrait of somebody, and I'm ready to sit down and start the portrait and trying to figure out how to place everything so that it all makes sense and it all looks realistic. Now, of course, what we're going to do here is just like a very generic how much space is between things. Like you're always going to want to go back in afterwards and adjust things so that they look more like the person that you're trying to capture and less like just generic person. But we'll explore as we go along. So first thing I'm going to do, drawing my portrait of a random person, is I'm going to give myself a nice oval for my head. I don't want to make it too long of an oval. But I'm looking at their face, like face on. So it is going to be more oval than rounded. Now, as we're talking about just like generic proportions of a person, there's going to be a lot of math and fractions going into this. So to help place everything on your face very, very lightly, one thing that we can do is give ourselves a nice middle line down our vertically down the face. We want it nice and in the middle. And then also very lightly, again, a line in the middle horizontally. And I'm just gonna, like on my face, I'm just gonna leave them in these middle spots to help give us some orientation around. However, I am gonna start to write a bunch of fraction notes on the side. So this is the height of my face. So this would be my chin, and this is the top of my head. Top of head. Because I don't want to get us too bogged down with lines on our actual face. So we've got the rough shape of our head so far. This middle line eventually is where we're going to start putting, like that's going to be the foundation for our facial features. But since we're just looking at the overall shape of the head to start with, what we can do is we can come down to the bottom half here, and we can start to adjust this bottom half so that it looks more like a specific person. So maybe rather than being quite so rounded. Maybe they've got some decent cheekbones happening. And then a strong jaw. So you can see we're starting with a basic shape of the oval for the overall face, shape of the head. And then we go back in and refine stuff to personalize it as we go along. So I've got my circle for my head, oval. And now I've come back and adjusted the bottom portion so it looks a little bit more like somebody's chin, cheeks, jaw area. So now let's start to lay in some features. If I've got the middle part of my head, this is one half, and that's the other half. Our eyes actually fall directly in the middle of our head. That's like the first thing that can really change and improve portraits is just making sure that your eyes are in the middle of your head rather than like way floating up at the top. You'd be amazed at how much of a big difference that makes. So now, before I place my eyes, it's helpful to know, so this is like the vertical spacing of a head. We're gonna have some horizontal spacing over here. Ear, and an ear. Eyes are remarkably spaced out on your face. Obviously, some people have smaller eyes, some people have larger eyes, but for the most part, generally speaking, your eyes are going to be spaced out so evenly that you could have 5 of them touching from one ear to the next. Obviously, these two are like your actual eyes. It's going to look real creepy here for a second. You know. That's where your actual eyes sit, but they are spaced out enough that you could have a full eye on either side and in between. So, just to get us started, we're going to place 2 circle eyes spaced out on our face here. I would recommend, again, drawing very lightly, mark out where your 5 are. That one's not quite right. That's a little better. So I'm not doing the full circles because I don't want to like add too much extra to the face, but I am marking out like this would be 1 circle, that would be 1 circle, that would be 1, etc., etc. And I'm only going to, again, very lightly, add 2 circles where our actual eyes sit. Okay, so I've got the overall ball space for my eye at the moment. Now let's start to get in the contours of what your eye actually is going to look like. Because, like, yes, your eye itself is a ball in your head, but we're focusing today on the contours and what that's going to look like for your face. So I'm going to start on the outside here. This is the outer edge of my eye, contemplating where I want to go next. Actually, no. First, yeah, crap. Let's see. What do I want to do first? We'll do eyes first. The eyelids, anyway. Okay, so I'm starting on the outer corner of my eyelid, and I'm going to start to create more of a football shape. And I'm actually going to extend a little beyond the edge of my circle on the inner corner because we've got tear ducts on the inside. And the same thing on the right side. I'm starting on the outer edge, give myself more of a football shape, and go a little beyond the eyeball. And then we've got the bottom lid. So again, I'm starting on the outer edge, adding more of that football shape. And I'm going to meet it on the outer, just outside of the circle, because we've got this nice tear duct now. And the same thing on the right side, starting at the outer corner, bringing it in to serve that football shape. We're going to start to get our irises and pupils in place. So when I go to draw my iris, so if I'm looking at just the contours of an eye, we've got a circle to get us started. I'm only using one eye here. We've got more of a football to get those eyelids in. And we're going to go back to another circle. Now, when I put in the circle for my iris, it's probably going to touch my bottom lid a little bit, but it's going to extend above the top lid. So when I put that on my face here, it's going to touch the bottom lid a little bit and extend above the top lid. A big trick when you're drawing eyes, especially when you're just doing contours, we really want to make sure that our irises and our pupils are looking the same direction. So I started with my left one and I had it pretty much centered. I want to make sure that my right one is pretty much centered as well. Because otherwise we get a cross-eyed effect, but it's not actually like being cross-eyed. It just throws off your whole what you're aiming for. So we want to make sure that they're aiming the same direction. So like if you've got your iris facing more shifted more to the left, you'd want this one to be shifted more to the left as well. And then right in the center, we're going to give ourselves another circle. Yes, these are going to look a little bit creepy today because we're just doing the contour lines. That's just what happens. All right, we've got some eyes. So now we're going to place our nose. If I'm looking at this scale from the top of my head to my chin, the next place I'm going to look at is halfway between my eyes and my chin, which is ultimately 1/4 of the way down. And that's where the very end of my nose falls, the very tip of my nose. So if I'm looking here, I'll give myself just a slight little measurement halfway down. Now the trick with contours of your face, and I mentioned it some when we were sharing what's hardest about drawing faces. Noses, really, most of your nose, all of the like bridge of your nose and everything, that's all shadows, that's all shading. So for today, because we're just focusing on the contours, the like lines that we see on our face, the only real contours that we have are going to be the like bottom edge of the button of your nose and then like the outer edges of your nostrils. And that's it. That's all you need to add as a nose. Moving forward. So the next thing we're going to add, because we're done with the nose, the next thing we're going to add is our mouth. And this is where we start to like really measure stuff compared to where other things are on our face. So to place my mouth again, I'm looking at this little bit of space that's left in my like marker, and I'm cutting it in half again. And that's where your mouth, the center of your mouth is. Mouth. So if I'm looking here on my actual face, about halfway is going to be here. Now, before I go in and fill, like this is the line with the center of my mouth where my lips meet. We don't want it to just extend forever. That's part of the reason why things start to look weird. The crease of your mouth, where your lips meet, really only extends from, like if your eyes are looking straight forward, from the end of one pupil or the end of one iris to the other. So if I were to draw like imaginary lines, here's where one ends, and that's where the other side ends. And that would be where the center line from my mouth exists. And then we can add in lips, and lips are going to be a whole variety of different shapes and sizes. They could be really thin, they could be really big. The lips that you come up with are really going to depend on who you're looking at. And we'll cover them in way more depth on Wednesday. But this is enough to get our basic face going. So we've got our eyes, our nose, our mouth. We need some eyebrows, first of all. And then we need ears and hair. So eyebrows, and those of you who are super into makeup, you've probably already heard some tricks about filling in eyebrows because they are such a makeup focus in the recent years. So you might already have a sense of where your eyebrow should begin or generally begins, and where it ends. So we're going to create an imaginary line between the end of my nose and the corner of my eye, up above to about here. This is where the start of my eyebrow will be. And I'm going to keep with my imaginary lines from the corner of my nose through the center of my pupil, because it's looking forward. This is where the peak, the top part of the arch of your eyebrow is going to be. And then one last line from the corner of your nose to this outer corner of your eye. And that's where your eyebrow generally will end. So from here, we can give ourselves, again, I'm just doing a simple contour line to represent my eyebrow. I wouldn't actually leave them this 90s thin because that would be insane. we'll talk about like actually good eyebrows tomorrow as we're doing eyes. Because again, really eyebrows are going to be a lot of shading, but this at least gives us a contour marker of where that's going to exist. So I'm going to do that again on this side. The line from my nose to the inside of my eye, from the corner of my nose through the center of my pupil, and then from the corner of my nose to the outside corner of my eye. Some good foundations for our eyebrows. All right. So eyebrows, how they are not eyebrows, ears, where the ears normally fit. Again, I said we're going to cheat a little bit, but at least it's as far as like knowing where the proportions of them are, it's going to be helpful. So generally, your ears are going to connect to your head roughly in line with your eye. And then the top of your ear will be roughly in line with your eye, the edge of your eyebrow. So for the sake of example, this person's going to end up with some kind of Dumbo the elephant ears, but that's fine. So they connect to the head in line with your eye, and the top part is in line with the very edge of your eyebrow. And then the bottom of your ear lobe is going to be in line with your nose usually. And where they actually connect to your head, that's going to be something that you're going to want to look really closely for, because if you remember talking about genetics, if you've gotten to genetics in biology or science class, some people have really connected earlobes and some people have really detached earlobes. So there's not a standard for me to be able to share. It's just, the very bottom of your earlobe is about in line with your nose, and where it connects is where it connects on that person. Let's get some hair in here. So we'll talk a lot about hair on Thursday and all of the different ways that it moves and behaves. But the best thing to know for now is that we've moved our eyes to the center of our head where they should be. Your hair is not going to come out of just the top. You're going to end up with, some sort of situation in the middle of your head in this like forehead space. You can tell I'm not Gen Z because I automatically am just like, this person gets a side part. I'm going to defy it though. So if I'm saying this is where my part is, it's going to end up swooping a little down in this forehead space that we've got, and swooping a little down on this side as well. And obviously, it's not going to just disappear on the side of your head. You're probably going to have to draw some more out on the edge. And again, it's just contours today, so we're not super worried about how the hair looks. We just need some lines to define where it would exist on its head. Also notice at the very top, like this is where the top of your scalp is, but your hair usually stands up off of that. So you're probably going to end up drawing above that circle as well.